You're listening to the GC Collaborative Podcast, a resource for the worship arts team at Grace Church.
All right, was that you?
Huh?
I was.
Yeah, that was me.
I just assumed it was Cody, honestly.
Yeah, I was like, whoa. I did not, like, it was so fast. Anyways, welcome to the GC Collaborative Podcast. I'm keeping that. Yeah, 100%. That was amazing.
Thanks, man.
You, like, through your voice, you ventriloquized that.
Hey, listen.
Like nobody's business.
I've been working. It's been a while since we've done this.
Whew. Anyways, welcome to the GC Collaborative Podcast. As you can see, we're going to have a fun one.
No, they can't.
As you can hear.
Thank you.
Thank you for always.
Technically speaking, these people cannot see us.
Malfunction.
It is all about what
The
they're
lies are
hearing.
happening. There are lies happening. Malfunction. They cannot see us. Sorry.
Wow, you can't even get through like the opening of just saying hi.
I think I've just said welcome to the GC Collaborative Podcast a few times. And
There
that's
you go.
it. But anyways, we are so glad you're here. This is the first podcast we have of the year
2023.
2023.
Yeah, it is. That's very accurate. That's a true
thank you.
statement. 2023.
I was
We
looking
are
for
here.
affirmation because I was like, is it 2024? I don't know. January is a long month. It feels like a year sometimes. But we're so excited. The last couple of seasons, if you will, we've kind of focused on worship and music and worship specifically. We've interviewed members of our worship team, talked about different aspects of it. And this next couple of months, we always do 4. So February 1st to May 1st, we're going to talk about kind of more of outside of music and the arts in general. And so we thought it'd be awesome to start with this crew with us.
Us being Luke and Ben.
Luke, Ben.
Your hosts and co-hosts and that kind of thing. And we've invited a couple extra guests today.
And we are going to talk just kind of about the culture of grace and arts and kind of what has been around and continues to grow. And so we're excited to do that. So we actually have Chris Anderson, who is our film director, and Cody VanHoozen.
VanHoozen! Yes!
Yes, I am here! Who is our production director.
Yeah.
And we just thought it'd be awesome just to talk about our culture, our some of our values as a culture and where we're kind of at as a culture too.
I think it'd be amazing. If you wouldn't mind, if we could just take a second and just maybe they can introduce themselves, talk about what their role is and what they do. We'll start with Chris. If you want to tell everybody, what do you do as a film director here at Grace?
Yeah, I tell a lot of stories, and we also like to be creative as well. That's important, and so really we like to keep a pulse of what's going on at Grace Church and even outside the walls of Grace Church and how God's moving and how we can visually and audibly tell that story and get people, whether it's engaged with what God's doing or inspired, whatever that looks like. So that's a little bit about what I do.
Yeah. And the stuff that you create, a lot of it we see during our weekend services.
That's right.
As you're
highlighting
people and their stories. And you do a great job at that.
Thanks, man.
Yeah. Cody VanHoozen.
Yeah, that's me. Yeah, I
production director.
And that means I help see a lot of the AVL tech needs across all the campuses at Grace, which is pretty cool. We make sure that the vibe and the feeling that you capture, whether you're at any of our locations or online, kind of feels the same, as well as some more of the technical side of things, installing lights and running cables and doing some of that good stuff too. But a lot of interfacing with the other side of the creative environment. There's the worship side that Luke pointed out. We talk a lot about, but the equal parts of worship in a church environment is the tech team. That it's 50-50. So it's cool helping the whole teams, both sides of it, kind of feel like one giant worship team is cool.
Yeah. Production director extraordinaire.
Absolutely.
While Luke puts on
Luke's he's getting serious. If this was video, you would see Luke just pulled out some chapstick from his pocket. It's like, all right, here comes. Here it comes. I don't know what's coming next, but it's going to get serious.
You try to have a podcast with dry lips. That's all I'm saying. Okay? January is a long month. I just said
First world problems, man.
I just feel like it's just dry outside. Thus it's dry on my lips. Okay. Anyways.
Moving on.
So, no, but what we want to do, and we were kind of talking about just different avenues for this podcast was just kind of describing what we kind of do at Grace, and we're always learning. I always love that about Grace. So this is by no means we have arrived and we figured it out, but these are kind of just some things that we try to do and that we feel like are great directions for us as a team. And so we actually usually try to make this conversational and kind of figure it out as we go on the podcast, but this time we actually talked beforehand. So I want to throw out the 3 points all together just so everybody kind of knows these are the 3 things that we want to talk about today, and then we're going to kind of go through each one of them a little bit and talk and share stories and stuff like that. But kind of the 3 things we pulled out, and correct me if need be, but the first one was collaboration. We just are very highly desire collaboration, hence the name GC Collaborative. That legitimately just means Grace Church Collaborative. So that's the first one. Yeah, we worked really hard on that. And then the second one is everything being done for worship. So everything we do, hopefully we strive for it to come through the lens of this is for the Lord, and He's given us these gifts and just doing these projects for Him. And then the third one is caring more about the artist, or you could even say the human, more than the art that they create, and caring about the health of the person rather than just, hey, we got to get this done, and we got to do this, and we have all these projects, and we just need to do them, but to really care about just who the person is creating the art, making sure they're healthy. And so talking about those 3 kind of overarching points and kind of just sticking to those. There's more than that. There's more things we could talk about, but we thought these 3 would be kind of the best to kind of discuss today. And I can think of a better crew to do it with. So let's just...
I just said, "Whoa, guys!"
Man, you guys sound the same to me. It's so weird. I thought Ben was starting to say something, so I was like, but man, you guys, it's just throwing me. You guys have similar voices in my head for some reason.
That's a compliment.
They're both gentle.
Exactly. I take it
I
as a
receive that.
compliment.
I take that as a
They're
compliment.
both gentle and loving.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's start with collaboration. I know collaboration has always been. I've been at Grace for 8 years now. Ben, how long for you?
Long time.
Exactly. Very long.
18 years. I've been on staff 18 years this
Wow,
year.
so you're 10
18?
years ahead. That's a good way to remember.
Yeah,
10 years
I
ahead
think
of me.
so. Yeah.
But I know in the 8 years that I've been at Grace, and I'd love to hear, honestly, from the start of even before I got here, it's collaboration has always seemed like a big part of Grace. And so it hasn't been hard to continue to kind of keep that spirit. So I'd love to hear just from your perspective of the history of that and or when it started.
Yeah, I would say as far as collaboration within the culture of our church, it came many moons ago. It came from something that Tim, as our senior pastor, came to realize was an important factor in what we were doing, both as a church plant, a new church plant, and then for things that we were trying to do during weekend services, right? So a lot of times churches historically would leave a senior pastor alone or a teaching pastor alone to let him just craft and do his thing, and then he comes on the weekend and teaches. But what Tim came to realize many years ago was that there was an incredible value in receiving feedback and receiving information from other people within the church body. And so he started something that was called I forgot what they call it. The
Sermon review.
Sermon review. Thank you. Sermon review. I was going to say pre-sermon, but it's not that. It's the sermon review. So he did a sermon review where he would invite people within the church body that were of different backgrounds, different ages, demographics, that kind of thing, just to let him teach through the message one time before a weekend. And that was something that was unusual for a lot of churches because a lot of pastors I think it's difficult to put themselves in that type of position because it's a very hard place to be when you're receiving feedback. And he genuinely would want honest feedback because when we get into our walls of being on a church staff or this is the thing we do, it's important to hear from other people so that we don't say too much Christianese or we don't say things that don't actually connect with people or land with people well. So that was a value that was realized probably about 20 years ago. What is it, 2023 now? It was about 20 years ago or so. I remember that we would invite people to like a Friday night over at, we would rent out a room and we'd get pizza and invite people. and I'd have to help coordinate all the pizza and all the stuff, and we get people there, and we'd take notes, and it'd be like a 3-hour session of people contributing to ideas for sermon series and topics, and then he would start, he'd do his weekly sermon review stuff. So I would say that it started in that era, and has bled into everything that we do. There's a high value of collaborating with others in everything. And so it's what we do as a worship arts ministry. We've kind of adopted that and believe highly in not just doing things. And then we should not ever be surprised by the things that we are creating, and shouldn't just be shown without having somebody's eyes on them, right? And discussion. So so that's kind of a value that we have, and it's been super helpful.
I love it.
Is that a good story?
This is a great story.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
I was entranced.
Well
Yeah.
said.
There you go.
I was like, so beautiful.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, wrap it up. Let's go.
Yeah. But yeah, no, and I think that passes down naturally to, or sometimes not naturally,
Yeah.
sometimes it's work, but into what we do, because I believe and see it all the time of just working with you guys, being Chris and Cody and Ben and the other people on our team, and we just kind of always have to collaborate in some way, shape, or form. It seems like almost the culture pushes you towards that, no matter what, which I kind of love.
Yeah.
And I wanted to kind of talk about the beauty of it, because I think, to your point, collaboration actually creates things that are bigger than one person can make. And so when you start bringing more people in, it actually, creates, like, I know when I come up with an idea, or Anderson or Cody come in with an idea, all of us kind of start latching onto it, and then kind of it becomes something, even if we're like, oh wait, I wasn't even like expecting for that to happen, it can kind of become something bigger. So I'd love to hear kind of just even stories of like projects that you guys have done, or just situations, because I think collaboration is not just that's cool to do. It is actually healthier to do, in my opinion.
Right.
Yeah, and I think it's like it's a desire God puts on you. Like like we were mentioning yesterday, you have this idea, it starts birthing in your mind, and you're like, oh, this is really cool. And then you cross this threshold subconsciously, I think, where you're like, I need to go talk to Luke, or I want to go talk to Chris. And like, I think that desire of like wanting to reach out was God put there initially, so that then he knew, like, well, I needed to go talk to Luke, because Luke's going to help make this idea better, and then we're going to get this idea and get fired up. And I think that's how I ended up even talking with Chris and Luke about Easter. Is like, I was walking by to get a drink, heard them talking about this idea, and then 30 minutes later realized I was sitting there chatting about stuff. So it's just the natural collaboration that happens when you're pushing into what I think God wants in your team, in your life, in your church, that whole shtick.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I mean, for me, an example is kind of what you just brought up is we're prepping for Easter, which is kind of crazy to think. We're in January, we're prepping for Easter already. And man, the best ideas truly, I really believe, come when you have multiple people giving their input. And there are times when we collaborate. So yeah, Luke and I had a meeting scheduled where we want to talk about Easter, and we just had, like, in our mind's eye this little nugget of an idea, and nothing's gotten approved. We haven't presented, we haven't storyboarded, we haven't done a screenplay, anything. And yeah, Cody was there walking by, and that's just the culture. I think a reflection of who we are at Grace is we just pulled Cody in and said, dude, be a part of this. Be a part of this, because we value what you think and your ideas, and so we just started brainstorming, man. And not only did we come up with something that we believe is special and powerful, we had a lot of fun in the process.
Yeah,
it's a fun process,
right?
It
never
is.
feels like a chore. Like, oh, you're asking me to help you with a task that I don't want to do. It's like, oh, the second Luke and Chris asked me about this, I'm exactly hyped, because I know, like, you guys think that I could add something to it, so Absolutely. Like, there's that natural pull. You forget you're working on something. It's just you're just creating this whatever's happening.
And when you collaborate too, the other thing that it does is that I think that it adds value to people. It makes people feel valued. Like, I'm a part of something bigger than myself, and I'm invited into a process, and I'm not excluded and that kind of thing. Now, I will say this. I think that with with collaboration in mind, I think that you want the right people for different projects. It depends on kind of what you're working on, right? And so I know that we've been through seasons at Grace. If I can share a quick story of kind of when I got here back in 2015, where we would invite, one of our staff values is empowering volunteers, and we do, I think, a great job at that overall. But I remember we would invite all these volunteers in, and we would have like 20 people, and we would, we'd start going down like, hey, what if we did this? What if we did this? And we started writing all these things down. And then we didn't land on anything. So you almost had too many voices into the process. And what ended up happening was we didn't go with certain people's ideas, and then they would get hurt and that kind of thing. And so I think, with the idea of collaboration, I think it's important to have the right people. And it's also an opportunity for people to grow in that as well. And so they might not be right at first, but if they see the process and see the culture that we have here at Grace Church and what that looks like, then they can grow into that as well. And so I think that's just a really special thing about Grace Church.
Big time. Yeah.
And I think it takes, because I know it's kind of taken time to get to this point, because I've been here 8 years. I think you've been here 6 or 7.
Coming up on 8.
Oh, coming up on 8 as well.
8, yeah.
And now you've been here 4.
I'll be 4 this year.
Yeah. And so I do think like collaboration takes relational equity a lot of times, and trust. And so I think
That's true.
Building that in as well has been huge, just with people being here for a longer period, and giving that time, because there's a lot of vulnerability in sharing ideas, I think, and saying, hey, here's an idea I have, hoping that even if it's horrible, somebody doesn't just like make you feel horrible.
Right.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And I think it takes a level of communication and learning how each other work. And I think the one thing that we've kind of gotten to is a respect of each other, where it's like, hey,
absolutely,
you're good at what you do, and you're good at what, everybody's good at what they do. And so if we don't like an idea, it's not saying that you're not good at what you do. It's just saying, no, we're after the best idea and what that is. And I think that, especially as artists, that can be hard, because I know for me, like, I grew up doing projects by myself. I did it all.
Sure.
I didn't even show anybody till it was done, because it was like, okay, this is the best I can make it. Now you can see it. And so to bring people a part of that process up front, when you're like, I think Tim calls it the ugly baby. When you're like, I have this ugly baby, and it's not even fully fleshed out, but I want to invite you into it. That's a very vulnerable thing, but I think it's really awesome in that Grace has kind of had that, and then to kind of see that continue to grow in different areas, and to see that spirit. Because I always kind of, for myself, right, wrong, or different, I think I'm like the middle-aged Gracer, in that, like, I haven't been here for 20 years, but I'm not here for 2 years. So I've kind of gotten to see where it's been and come into it when it was already started for a long time. So seeing that to now where it's at, it's kind of this cool, like, whoa, like, it's crazy to see what the culture was when it was smaller staff to now what it is now. And to just be a part of, like, watching that has been really awesome, to see those values spread. And to just see what you worked on, Ben, probably for years, and developing, and now passing that on to us youngins. Yeah,
it's been awesome. You whippersnappers. I think the biggest, I think it's the 3 things I always tell people about collaboration is just, if you can just take a moment, stop what you're doing, collaborate, and then listen.
Wow, is that really what you're going to say? Oh my gosh, we're like,
I feel like there's a song in there.
Yeah, let's write this down. Let's collaborate on it. Let's collaborate. But no, and I think another cool aspect of collaboration, which I really love, is one, just working together. 2, people getting to work in their giftings. And so, like, somebody was saying how, you naturally go to somebody else, and I think that's because I know the limit of my gift. And so, like, I can think of film situations, but they're very basic. And so it's like, if I want this to go somewhere good, then I should probably bring Anderson into it, because he thinks in that world all the time. Or even from a musical level, being a person who sings, there are songs that we create that it's like, this person would actually be the best voice for this song. And it actually allows those things to, you don't feel like you have to be the greatest at everything. It's, no, I'm really good at these things and I'm okay at these things, but man,
where it gets, where tension starts is when people start to get defensive or protective because they interpret a lack of knowledge in a certain area is being a threat, right? And because we got a team with so many different, Nathan, Kaylee, Shauna, Megan, we got such creative, Hannah, we got so many creative people on our team alone on staff.
You gotta label them all. You got to keep going.
I know. Well, I'm going to stop right there. I made that mistake.
And all the rest of you listening.
I've made that mistake several times, but we have so many gifted people. It's just awesome to be able to know that I could pick up a phone and go, man, I don't know how to, I had to go to Shauna the other day just because I didn't know how to do something on my social media, doing something with an image, right? Yeah. How do you do this?
Did you forget your passcode?
Yeah. I was like, how do you work?
It's called a passcode.
She's like, hold the phone to your face and it'll unlock.
I have to relate to the person I'm talking to, Chris.
Right.
So she took my phone, held it to my face, and I was like, oh, it unlocked.
You're probably more advanced in that area.
Is that my face?
Than I am.
That's how that works. Okay.
Ben does more social media than all of us combined, probably. So.
That's true.
That's totally a joke.
He's famous, bro.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, so I just think it's really, it takes time and it takes effort. So I don't know if anybody from any other churches or anything ever listened to this, and if you're that person who's like, oh, I just want to have that culture, what would be your advice for that? If they're just like, I want to have a collaborative culture, and I know sometimes when we're on those endeavors, it's like you want it to happen tomorrow.
Yeah, right.
And then when it doesn't, we get upset. And
no, that's a good question. I would say, is you obviously if you're a person that's not the senior leader, the best thing is to just start asking people's input. Like make an appointment or schedule a meeting with your senior pastor, whoever your influencers are or whatever, and just ask their opinion about some of the stuff you're doing, and be open to critique and just say, hey, can you tell me, we did this past weekend, how did that go? Or what did you think about this? And just doing stuff like that. I think that will just start naturally generating that stuff. But
and those people above you, they might not even be thinking about it. Like each of us, like Luke just said, like Chris thinks in a film way, right? And I when I came out here, I thought in a very audio way, right? And I was put on a specific live sound task here, but where I come from professionally is like the studio world. So once COVID hit and we started dealing with a lot more recording stuff, I came to Ben and I was just like, hey, I could take these captures and mix them like an album. There's a little more work. We need some extra time in the week to make it happen, but I desire this as an audio guy. This is I want Grace to sound better as a whole. I feel this could be a good thing during COVID. But if you don't know, Ben may have not even, that might not have been on his radar. We already had a broadcast mix. It's going on the internet. What's there to worry about? So my gifting in that moment was just to know, I know that I could give a little extra and make the church as a whole better. And they're just not going to ask me for it because they don't know to ask for it. So you do need to be proactive in your giftings. They're in Luke and I starting songwriting. I was here for a year or so before we started throwing the idea around and talking about, songs that I had written and you had written. And then, now we have every Monday we get together and songwrite, and we're growing that team. We've been writing with more people on Mondays. And just because we kept harping on that idea to each other, that we were like, we love songwriting. It'd be good for Grace to have originals. Let's really hash this out. And, and that's still in its ugly baby stage, like you're saying. So it's cool seeing that move along. Absolutely. And
well, I think too, to credit Grace and Ben as our
sire
leader that is right above us.
Sire.
Well, you said not to call you that in front of people. Right?
Kind of.
I'm sorry. We'll cut that out.
Cut that out.
That's only when we're in meetings together.
Right.
And he's like, you will honor me. No. But to credit you guys, Grace as a whole, because I do think from Tim to Ben to Brian to all the campus pastors, you guys are always open to new ideas. And I was actually having lunch with somebody today, and I said, and I was talking about that, I'm always very grateful that you guys are open to those conversations. And when somebody like Cody says, hey, what do we think about this? There's an environment where those conversations can happen. And it's not just no, do what you're told or do what you're doing, that
Why are you asking questions? Just Stop it.
How dare you look at me? And so, but the other cool thing about collaboration that I always really love, and I think what we try to do is sometimes in good intention, churches can burn artists out just because if somebody's super talented, it's like, oh, that's awesome. Like, can you help us with this? Can you help us with that? And then in stories we've heard, and I want to be very careful on how I present this because we don't do everything correct and we've done things wrong too. So we're all learning and growing all the time. But one thing that we've kind of, I think, mentally tried to do is say, okay, how do we not burn artists out? How do we create ecosystem in the worship arts and creative arts world that allows artists to thrive, but then there's not all this pressure put on them all the time to create these amazing, huge things. And I think in that we've kind of created this cool, I don't know if system's the right word, but where kind of the pressure lies on different people on different projects. And so I know for like bigger services like Christmas and Easter, sometimes we'll rely heavily on film. Sometimes we'll do the bigger thing will be the song or a song. Sometimes it will be Kaylee's done amazing lyric videos for different big services that we've done. And so we kind of pass, I think, unintentionally and intentionally the ball around a little bit where it's like, hey, you ran really hard and sprinted for this last thing. Let's give you a little bit of, you're still contributing, but you're not necessarily the lead.
Yeah, more of a support. On other projects where you're not the lead.
Yeah, and I think that is kind of a culture that's been created, seems like thus far, in different areas. And I think that is because we kind of have... We kind of sit in this place, which once again, I love the history, and I always know you have a story for this one, but of where we do just care about the heart and the artist and not just, in the worship world, it's having a huge weekend every weekend, but saying we actually care about our people, so let's act out of that, and then the art will come out of that. So I'd love to hear the history. Start with the history of that.
Oh, yeah. Of you mean like within the worship ministry of how we came to a place of allowing people to not do stuff or to rest?
Well, I'll tell you. I'll be
you have
honest,
a specific. It sounds like you have a story specifically in mind.
When Tim came into your office, and that I think that is a good example of like that idea.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. Because that there was a moment. There was a couple of moments. One was this was. I remember the date. I remember years. This was this was 2009. We had to deal with some issues with some.
Can I stop you really fast? What would make your stories just maybe take them up a notch? Is when you do the date thing, just kind of act like you glitch for a second and be like, in 2009, Tim came into, and you just go right back. You just go right back to normal.
April 2009.
It was actually April 2009.
You kind of act like you don't even know what happened. You're just like,
what just happened? So there was a season where as our ministry was growing and as our church was growing, and therefore our need for worship ministry to solidify itself to not just be the same 5 individuals on the stage every weekend, instead of it being something that was like, somebody's garage band, into, hey, this is a ministry of a church, so we need to make sure that we're allowing the ability for other people to engage their giftings and their talents and let them serve the church in this ministry. It became very difficult for some of the people who, sweat and bled for, from coming from a middle school into a building. And then, so volunteers were just starting to kind of feel like, wait, why are you taking away my spot? It became more about that than it was like, I'm serving my church. It was more like, that's my spot. So we were going through just a transitional time of helping people understand that and see that. And during that time, there was some disunity happening within the team, and I was having to deal with it. And Tim was very encouraging and helping me walk through that. And there was just a time he told me, he sat in my office and said, "Hey, I just want you to know, I am happy with you on an acoustic guitar leading our worship services versus having an amazing, face melting type worship experience where nobody up there is actually leading worship. Nobody's unified. So that was empowering, because what it communicated was a culture of a desire to make sure that our church was actually worshiping and that our people that were worshiping. So it freed me up as a worship leader to not just feel like I was having to continually meet a certain bar or standard every week, and gave me the freedom to be able to go, hey, you guys, you're taking a weekend off because y'all need to fix your hearts, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that was very freeing for me. So yeah, I think that moment, and then there was another moment where after our first Easter service in our church building, our new building in 2006, we had just opened it up, and our first Easter was 2 weeks after we opened that South Campus. And we had instantly doubled from like 400 to like our second week, it was like almost 1,000 people.
Whoa.
Right?
Wow. Nice.
And so he came in and just said, I just want you to know I trust you. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, I just want you to know I trust you. I trust what you're doing. I trust you in this role. And I was like, wow, those were big 3 words that that I was very grateful for in my role, just because
that's
not
huge.
Yeah, that's not something that a lot of, and I've had conversations with worship leaders around the nation, and that's not a relationship that a lot of them have. Whenever I tell those stories, both of those, they get very envious, or or very like, man, I wish I had that. So,
yeah. Well, and to all the pastors out there listening to this podcast, we know there's a lot of you.
all of them.
But I do think that, just a really small side note, that is a very huge thing for a worship director or pastor, whatever they're called at your church, to hear that, because I think that can be the difference between them thriving in their role or dying in their role, is feeling that support. So quick little caveat to that.
For sure.
But yeah, and so I think that has just kind of resonated into what is Grace Now, is the heart of the artist, and us caring about the artist first and foremost. And so I know in the worship world, a lot of our conversations, like I'll talk with people and it's like, hey, just so you know, we care about you as a person more than we care about you as the singer or the guitar player or the drummer or whatever it might be. So this is where this conversation's coming from.
Yeah.
It's not it's more of, I just care about your heart. And then that comes from that or after that. And I think that's kind of carried over into other arts as well, from production to film to creative arts outside of that as well. And it seems like people notice that, not that we do it perfectly, but that we try to foster that community but it can bring out insecurities like you were talking about, because a lot of, and I don't know if you guys have any stories of this, but I've had times where people do have that insecurity where they've been the person that's been relied on at old churches or whatever it might be. And so it's like, hey, we kind of have like a rotation thing that happens in all worlds, like I was just saying with different artistic elements as well, where we're not always relying on this form of art to carry us. It's we kind of, so I don't know if you guys have any stories of those situations.
I mean, in the tech world, there's in AVL land a lot of people who do what I do at any church, rather the size. They kind of end up doing all of the roles. I know even at my last church, while I was tech director there and I had a volunteer team on the weekends, a lot of times you would end up doing multiple things. But you definitely had your hand in everything. So sometimes when you come onto a team where you may just need to be only on video, or I just need you to think about only your camera and only good camera shots, you can feel like, well, that means you don't value me as a producer. Or if I ask you to do slides, you don't think I'm good at sound or something. You know what I mean? But when the culture is really clear that it's, no, we're all just trying to make church happen. So like if I need a camera guy and we've got 10 audio guys, I'm going to jump on camera as Cody, or if we need someone to run lights, I'll pop on lights and make it happen while we can, and that's kind of our whole team's feel now. And it's been cool seeing if another campus has a need, if that maybe like South may have an excess of people, we can shoot a guy over to North to help, or send some from North to go over to Olathe. And even among teams now, we're getting a little more collaboration. Like Kurt, our worship leader over at Olathe, like he also gets a kick out of mixing and doing audio production, that kind of stuff. So he has hopped on sound at his team while his interns lead worship. You know, there's just a collaboration that he knows he can ask our tech team for help, where he's more of a musician in that particular area, and you know, vice versa. So that kind of collaboration in that gifting is just cool.
Well, and I think it starts from the top down. I mean, because I think we all remember Easter last year where we needed somebody with a leaf blower.
yeah. But it was a need, you know? It had to happen.
I don't know if we ever told this story on the podcast. But last Christmas, we did a video with all the drums. Easter. We did a video with all the drummers, and we needed the drapes to look like the wind was blowing really heavily.
It was the Holy Spirit. It was the Holy Spirit.
So Ben walks in, and you know, he's the boss of all of us. And so he would never say that, but I will for him. And so he walks in. He's like, "Hey, well, how can I help? And I was just like, honestly, it's like, I need you to sit behind this drape with a leaf blower and just blow it as hard as you can." And we have pictures.
It's one of my favorite behind the scenes
photos. If you ever see us, yes.
Oh,
so Shauna was there, who takes all of most of our photographs, was there and caught it. It was just him just serving. But seriously, I mean, and that's seriously a heart that I think you naturally
you have your thumbnail now for the
this episode.
Yes.
But yeah, it was just the best sight, because you know, once again, in all honesty, in a corporate mindset, you are our boss. And so I know, and it's just cool to see that you're just willing to be like, cool. And I think you had your unsweet tea, and you
my Chick-fil-A.
Yeah. And it was prizes. It was awesome. And I think everybody in the room, all of our volunteers who are serving all the time, like they loved it. They got a kick out of it too. Funny. And it was just fun. And so, but I think that heart transfers down to where we're all just a part of a team, you know, trying to, and I think you exemplify that naturally, so then it's easy for us to be able to do that as well. But a few things to work on since I've kissed up so much.
Well, now, here it comes. Now I need reality.
Yeah. Oh man, Anderson, you got any? Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, you're fine. I'm enjoying the conversation, honestly, just listening. No, but I think there's so much peace in knowing that when if you're feeling as an artist, as a creative, as somebody, as a worker, whatever you want to call yourself, when you're feeling burnt out, when you're feeling stuck, there is so much peace knowing that you have a team that's going shoulder to shoulder with you that you can lean on for any project. I'll give a quick example. I literally 2 days ago, 2 or 3 days ago, I texted Luke. I said, "Hey man, working on this screenplay for Easter. I got to be honest with you, I'm stuck. Like I don't know what to write. I'm just hitting a wall." And Luke literally was like, "Hey, you got time at 3:30? Let's brainstorm this." And we were able to come up with something awesome. And I didn't have any hesitation or anything in my head that I was like, "Oh man, Luke's just too busy. Oh man, Luke can't help. Luke's, whatever." I think there's a lot of power in that team element that I personally I don't take for granted, and I think it's just a huge blessing. And that's just one example. I mean, there's been many times where I've been stuck on something, or any of us have been stuck and hit a wall and can't get past that wall, and it just takes a village really to come in and help each other. And sometimes it is sheer burnout. Like, man, I'm tired. Like, I remember last Easter, the Veil project, we went, man, there was so much coordination that went into that and time consuming. And there were moments where I just was honest and just burnt out. And man,
I think my left eye started twitching last
night. Right.
It really did. I remember it being like, why is my eye twitching?
But there's so much power in chemistry, and there's power in that team dynamic that again, it takes time to build. It doesn't just happen overnight, and it takes that equity. But man, when you get there, and we're still a work in progress, and it's not perfect, and but when you do develop that, man, it's special that you really create something special. So,
well, and I think too, and I don't know. Help me if I say this wrong, but I think the idea that Tim gave you of like, hey, if it's an acoustic guitar and you want a voice, then we're still going to have church.
Yeah.
And I know I've come into your office multiple times on bigger projects and been like, I don't know if this is going to happen. Like and I think the drum one was one of them where it's like, there's so much that has to happen. I don't know if it's going to work. And I remember you just like in Ben's calm voice being like, hey, good news. If it doesn't happen, we're still going to have Easter. Like, nobody's going to know that we had this video planned. Like, and I think as an artist, at least I'll speak for myself, I can put so much pressure on myself to do these things that in a way it makes me work better and harder when that pressure is kind of relieved.
Yeah.
And so sometimes in churches, I think for artists, it is just saying like, hey, it's okay. Like if this big project doesn't end up happening or some big kink happens, church will still happen. And I think it does, because I think if I didn't have your guys' voices really all together, because I know at different times we've talked, and I was left to my own devices, I think I would burn out much more regularly because I put that pressure on myself. And so I think there is just a lot of freedom that can come from that feeling of I need help or I just need to take a break. And I know, and that's really, I've never felt ashamed of saying that or like
weak.
Grace is looking down on me as a church because of that. And so I think that is a huge help to create an atmosphere for
and like I have a hard time seeing that in myself when I need a break. And that's like Ben's always asking me like, hey, how you doing? You making sure you're taking time? You always build vacation time, make sure you use it. So it's good for like, that's, it reminds me to then kick that down to my own peeps. Like,
Oh, absolutely. And so all this to say, I mean, I think we're revolving around the same topic, which is really Ben's just a bad boss and we need help.
I mean, there we go.
This is a big cry for help.
We are. I don't know if you can hear that.
How long does it take us to wrap on the point? 50 minutes.
Oh gosh, Ben, help us, save us. No, I'm totally joking. As we just showered.
It's just herding kitty cats, man. We're just herding the kitty
lions.
cats.
Haven't you ever read the book Herding Lions?
Oh yeah, okay.
A lion, a witch, and a wardrobe.
Why not? Sure.
That's your version. Yeah, no, I'm kidding.
Is that how you see yourself in the mirror as a lion? Really? That's what you're gonna go with? Oh my gosh! But that brings us to the last point, which I wanted to end with, which is it's all for the Lord, and I think that's always our heart. Always our desire. I can't think of a story for this one, Ben, but I'm sure you have one from history's past of just, it kind of actually is the story you already shared too.
Yep.
And just
play it again.
Heart being,
Tell
us again, just in case somebody skipped forward.
Well, I mean,
April,
one of the
2000.
things, 2008. I think it's just our worship ministry. When I say worship, I mean the music part of this is set up with our audition process. Our goal has never been, and it's not to just get the best musicians or amazing musicians or singers, but it's to help shepherd people to a place of utilizing their gifts and their talents in the local church, whether that's in our worship ministry or if it's another part of the body. And then also discovering, gosh, do you even like this place? Because we've made the mistake of inviting people into the worship team and then without having that discussion and then finding out that they really don't believe the same things and they don't like how we do ministry. And I've made that mistake. So that's why I make, part of the process is you need to go to the Grace Explore class. Sorry, it's been we've named it so many different things. I'm like, wait, what generation are we in? No. Explore the
I'll
Explore
cut it
class.
out later,
Yes,
so
there
they
you
don't
go.
even know I helped you. Don't apologize. Just keep moving forward.
Yeah.
Keep moving forward.
So our everything we do is fueled by that desire to not just use people for their talents, but is to connect people to their relationship with God and then to the local church if this is the place for them. That's what we want. That's what we ultimately desire. And when you approach everything fueling your ministry that way, all the things we just talked about flow out of that. The desire for people to rest, the desire to be collaborative. It's not about yourself and it's not about you. It's about ultimately serving God and letting your relationship with God fuel what you do. So
that's good. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would say like I have a story. This might not resonate with a lot of artists because I played basketball growing up. So I'm going to talk sports for a moment.
Sport ball here. Let me pick up my phone. Go ahead.
When I played basketball in high school,
You just wanted to say that. You've been waiting to say that.
Yeah, and then college, and then the NBA.
Is that why you're in Jordans?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. No, I had a coach one year, and he was so tough on his players that I remember there was a vivid moment I had where I had this thought of I was no longer playing. My heart wasn't to play to win or to honor the Lord. My heart was to play and just not mess up. And, you know, I say that because I think in what we do, the heart of why we do it is so crucial. Are we doing what we're doing to just be the coolest church out there? Are we doing what we're doing just so we can flex our muscles and show how cool we are? Or are we doing what we're doing because we want to honor the Lord, however that might look? And it's so cool, like with any project, whether it's film, audiovisual, you know, worship through music, whatever it is, it's so cool knowing that even if you're Luke and Ben, you guys are leading worship and every instrument falls apart on stage, that's not going to stop God from being worshiped. You know, that's you know, we had a moment at North Overland Park a few weeks ago, in fact, where the sound literally cut out of just the whole room. And so we didn't have any instruments going. We couldn't hear the singers, anything like that. And literally people just, their voices just rose up and we just worshiped.
Yeah,
and
the church just picked it up.
Yes. And it was such a cool moment. And I look at that as a creative and think, man, like that's the kind of heart that I want. That, man, even though I might fall short in a lot of areas, I have people that can pick me up in those areas, but then B, that's not going to stop God from moving. Like it's just not.
At all, right.
It's not at all. And so,
yeah, Rachel said she was almost disappointed when the sound kicked back on,
right?
Because she was like, oh, that magic moment that was just happening.
It was crazy.
It left, you know. And there was a year ago, 2 years ago that happened at South when we got the new sound system, and you know a similar issue. The network just it crashed out. So for the end of a service, it was just Luke up there a cappella to the crowd, and it was really awesome because you know, it's still in my mind as one of the most like epic worshipful moments. You walk in and the whole crowd singing so loud, you know.
Yeah.
One of those things you could never orchestrate if you wanted, but
yeah. Well, I was just really lucky in that moment for myself, just that we had that little choir outfit in the back that I just put on, and I was like,
is that where we lowered you from the rafters?
Always wearing Presbyterian robes under your normal clothes is finally paying off.
Now it's my time.
It's like the Superman.
Rip off your shirt.
Traditional cross reveals itself.
Oh my God, that's awesome. But yeah, I think that's it. Is you know, we talk about every once in a while, just the you know, people, and it's our job to help and guide people. But you know, it's like, oh, do you think God needs all these lights? Do you think He needs all these things? And I would agree with you, Anderson. It's not about those things. The easy relation to me is money. Is, you know, money in itself is not good or bad. It's what are you using it for? And I think the same thing with art and lighting and music and all of these things is, I think as Christians, hopefully, ideally, anything we can get our hands on, it's how do we use it for the glory of God?
Right.
And I think, to me, that's the mindset I try to keep. Now, being human, you can fall in and out of that and be selfish at times, for sure. But hopefully, with the community we have and just our walks with the Lord, we're always coming back to that place of like, how do we use this to just show who God is in the ways that we can.
And we keep each other disciplined with that, you know, like just trying to stay fit. You got to be disciplined to do it or else you'll fall off. Like we all are always focusing on keeping God the center, and it keeps it from being, you know, if we were putting in big old sound systems and tons of lights to show Overland Park how cool this building was, like that's ridiculous, of course, you know, but like all of it's to just amplify an amazing God that's there. You know, that we're using every gift that we can get our hands on too.
And does He need
tech.
it? Absolutely not.
No.
But,
right.
you know,
Need no.
But
And there's a lot of freedom in that. If like for me, at least, like, and if you're listening to this and you're like me, where I at times find my value in what I produce, and if I'm not producing or not producing at a certain level or whatever, I start internally struggling with my identity. But the truth is, if you're like that and you're listening, the truth is that that's not true.
Right. It's not the point.
That's not the point. The point is that we're using our gifts to honor the Lord, and no matter what gifts we have, and as long as our heart's aligned with His heart, then that's going to honor God. Whether we feel like it's quote unquote good enough or not, it's going to honor the Lord because we're walking with Him. We have staff values here at Grace Church, and in my opinion, I think the most important staff value that we have is to walk with God, because everything falls from that. And if you're not walking with God, then that's going to have a ripple effect in not just like your work or your creative ability, but your family and your life and your relationships and all these things. And so I think just walking with God plays such a key role in all of this, really.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree.
Yeah.
It's good stuff, guys. I appreciate it.
Thanks
good
for having
conversation.
us,
For sure.
Yeah,
This is awesome.
This is life-giving.
Yeah, so I think there's a couple things coming up. This is being released. What are we at?
February 1st.
February.
Valentine's Day.
Valentine's. Yeah.
One we saw.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Oh boy.
But yeah, Easter is quickly approaching, and so our team will be. We're going to be working hard on Easter, figuring out. Yeah.
Vision Night.
Yep, Vision Night is coming.
That'll be
Which remind me
February
of-
5th.
Yeah, February 5th.
Yep.
So be sure to come to that. You don't want to miss it. You won't want to miss it. Which I need to talk to you about that. I think I need to miss it. So we'll talk later. Yeah,
You heard it here first.
That's the kind of stuff. And I
say, not what I do.
I will say, as we close, I do want to remind everybody to make sure you're accepting or declining your
please.
planning center invites. But on a personal note, if I can just kind of take just a second and then we'll just end. But I do want to thank everybody for with what has happened in my family. It's been in a month, like as we're recording this, it's January 26th. So a month ago on Christmas Eve, we lost our oldest daughter, Maylee, to fentanyl. We found her when we got done with our Christmas Eve services, found her in her bedroom, and she had fentanyl intoxication. And so it's very sad. But the knowledge that we have of where she is, that she is in the presence of the Lord, is extremely comforting. And, it's been a long journey for us this month, lots of ups and downs and emotional things, but our family is doing well. And I just want to thank everybody listening who is aware of it, who's reached out to our family, and both somebody set up a GoFundMe. It was amazing. So it gave us the ability to take care of everything that was going to be needed for her. So we're so grateful for that. And then people have been giving us food, which has been really delicious and extremely bad for the diet I was crushing before Christmas. But we have some extremely good cooks in our church body and community.
Which is a gift from the Lord.
Absolutely.
Yes,
Absolutely.
definitely.
Another topic.
Yes. But I just wanted to make note of that. I thought it'd be odd to not say anything if why has Ben not saying anything about this? But
Absolutely.
yeah,
We love you, Ben.
Thank
Yeah,
you,
love you, Ben.
and we have felt it. And I just want to make sure you guys know from our family, we're just so grateful for you, and we have felt the prayers, we felt the love, and look forward to the day we're going to see her again. In the meantime, we're just going to miss the snot out of her. So
Absolutely.
anyway,
Absolutely. No,
Love you, buddy. Yeah.
And we love you guys, just our Grace community, anybody else listening, and those of you who are a part of our community, we hope that you do realize and that we do kind of revolve around these three things. And if we're not, feel free to always encourage us to do them better.
do the better.
But yeah, and just to know that this is our heart around things too, because I know sometimes I'm a part of conversations where because we don't use the same people or whatever it might be, it's, am I valued? Am I, and it's like, absolutely. We love you guys to death, and we're so grateful. And I always tell people all the time, we have a unique position at Grace where I feel like a lot of days I'm like, how do we create space for people to use their gifts, not, oh man, we need more people. And that is an amazing gift that God's given us for this time. And there's different seasons for sure. But we're just grateful for all of you, grateful that we get to be a part of it with you. So hope you guys have a great month. And thank you so much for listening to the GC Collaborative Podcast. Anybody else got anything? 3, 2, 1. Bye.
April 2000.
Bye, guys.
See you guys.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to the GC Collaborative Podcast. If you have any questions or would like more information, check us out at visitgracechurch.com.